Alright, working our way under the dash, you'll see our master cylinder, and as I was explaining, there's going to be some spacers that are just going to go right under the stud, and it's going to extend out just enough to where our pedal assembly will bolt up flush. But looking just above, just like the master cylinder, there was a cutout that we could just pull away. Now you can see where it's going to go and how this is going to attach. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to bolt this to the pedal assembly itself, bolt it to the wall, and then I'm going to be able to mark where this is supposed to go. So you'll see there that there's a nut right here that a bolt will go right through the pedal assembly, which will attach it. But I got here as an angle die grinder with my flap wheel right there. Then I do need to expose raw steel so that I can weld in there. So I went ahead and already put the spacers on the firewall, and then I got the bracket right here on our pedal assembly. You'll see how the bolt comes in right up underneath, and we have it at the correct angle, and I already cut out some space underneath there. Right there, I wanted to show you what the spacers are going to look like. From this side, you can see how thick they are. Here are what the spacers look like. These are about a ½ inch thick. I cut open the rest of the sound deadening material that's around that space that we need to weld. I'm going to use my angle bit here with a flat disc. We got the assembly up, and we got all the sound deadening material out of the way so we can do some grinding. I pushed it up there tight, flattened the bracket to the upper cowl area, and then mark the areas and where it's got to go. So now I'm going to take this whole assembly back out and start my welding. There she blows. Looks pretty rough in the camera. One of my friends had suggested just using some sheet metal screws instead of welding. You know, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea just to use the sheet metal screws. I couldn't tell you how long that would last, but being that there's going to be 6 in total, and maybe if you wanted to add more, that could be pretty strong, considering that it's also being held up by the firewall. You see that? And I'm not even pushing on my hand, and there's no pressure on the master with fluid, and it's not pushing on a clutch, and it's moving that much. You definitely are going to need to bolt it up there. So we're getting ready to do that and finalize our install. Just like that, we're officially bolted in, feeling pretty good. Turns out those ½ inch spacers worked out really well, so now you'll know that you need to space it out about a ½ inch. The clevis came with our new master cylinder, so make sure that you have that. It won't come with the clevis pin though. These other pedals right here for the gas and brake are gonna go right in place just like factory. Alright, there it is. Just like we were talking about, we swapped over the automatic pedal from the auto pedal assembly onto the manual because we were concerned about this throttle cable. Remember, we didn't have the manual one, and it looked like it was going to swap over, and it did. There they are. The new manual pedal assemblies are now completely bolted in. We have our clutch pedal, our brake pedal, and our gas. And it does bolt in just like stock. You don't have to do any modification to the gas and brake side. All the bolt holes line up, the brake master cylinder lines up, and because we went ahead and swapped over, I went ahead and installed the slave cylinder there, and we'll be able to bleed it once we get our clutch line on. So before I put the radiator in, I went ahead and decided that we're going to start finishing up the wiring, at least inside the bay. We need to get some wires from the actual reverse light switch, which is that guy right there. And it has these plugs on the end. And what some people have done is just run wires directly from here all the way inside the car. But I'm going to use some wires that are already here for the automatic, and these went to some of the solenoids. What I did was just clip off the male side from the transmission, and I made myself a jumper. So I found these used off of, matter of fact, that car right there, and that was for the brake fluid level. We're not going to be using it out in that car, so I was able to use the same plugs there. This is the other end from the automatic transmission that would plug into that one. And so I made me a little jumper here. The reason I decided to do that is because the plug that's on that wiring harness runs inside the car. Otherwise, we'd have to run 2 wires from inside the car, outside the car. It's already done because it's strung through the factory wiring harness. So what we have to do is we'll plug this in and just find out where those plugs are going inside the car. Chances are they're from the ECU. We'll unplug them from the ECU and then reroute them to where they need to go inside the car. So the jumper is connected to our reverse switch right there, and there is a lot of plugs that this connector shares the shape with, like this one right here, this one here, and then the one back there that I was showing you. You could use pretty much any one of those. This right here, these are the wires from that connector, that green connector I decided to use outside. These would come to this automatic plug right here that we're not going to be using. So out of the 4 ECU plugs, only one of them is not going to be used, and it's this one. And so what I did was just find those colors from the harness in here, and I clipped them, and then I made an extension harness here. This is the brand I use, and I got this from Del City, and that's the size. We used 1/4 inch. I used the 3/16. So along with this, I also swapped to a 96-97 manual cord ECU. So now I'm going to take this wiring harness over there and string it up over to the center console where all the automatic wires were. I'm going to show you some things that you're going to need to know so that you have power once you turn the ignition on. So right down here is the 2 big plugs that are right next to the original automatic shifter. This right here is essentially your neutral safety switch. What I end up doing is looping the 2 together, but I believe I'm going to add a neutral safety switch because our manual pedal does have it. But I looped it just so that we would have power to the ECU. And if you look, if I still had the automatic ECU in there, I would have this one. I would have like the D4 flashing, which tells you that there's an error code. Secondly, I decided I wanted to reuse the plug that was on the auto shifter, so I basically went through all the pins here that I knew I was going to end up using, and we'll get to these here shortly. And I depinned all the ones I wasn't going to use. Well, 2 of them are the reverse switch lights, and so those are the wires that I extended over from the ECU, and I just connected them real quick. It doesn't really matter which one it goes to, it's just completing the circuit. So we'll go ahead and put it into reverse there. Walk around to the back and boom! Oh, isn't that cool, man? So look, man, we got an auto 5-speed with reverse lights. What you're looking at here is our jumper for the cruise control and neutral safety switch. This right here was that big plug that we had looped around like I was telling you. This also is the key lockout as well. What will happen on the auto to 5 speeds is the ignition kind of runs off of the neutral safety switch, meaning you can't like get the key out of the ignition. This right here will make sure that it comes all the way out and you can actually pull the key out. This yellow one right here is the neutral safety switch, and that's how it works, right? So it'll interrupt this circuit here. That's going to unlock the key and of course send power from the ignition into the starter, and that's the yellow one here. And this right here is cruise control. There's 2 wires off of it, and there's one that's pink. You can barely see it right there. And then the next one is a ground, and actually it's going to go into the same ground as the neutral safety switch. And then the last one off of the cruise control is this wire right here, which is going to go to a pink wire that we left in the harness that's on the other little jumper that we left in the car. Our jumper harness is now plugged in. You can see I chose to route it right there with the ABS wiring harness, and I zip tied it up. And if you're unfamiliar with which one is the neutral safety switch and which one is cruise control, this one right here is your cruise control, and that one right there is your neutral safety switch. I already have the jumper harness plugged in, and it's all soldered together. It's all there. We'll be able to close all this up once we make sure that we test everything, which of course I already did to make sure before I soldered everything together. But you want to grab the key and then make sure it goes into the ignition, and of course that we have power, which we do. Then the next thing to make sure that the neutral safety actually works is try to turn the key. You can hear it doesn't work. Okay, but what you can do is push down the clutch. There's no fluid in it right now, so it'll drop down. What that does is it opens up the neutral safety switch, and I just want to check to make sure that the starter actually turns over. I'm not going to try to start it yet. Did you hear that? There it goes. Okay, so it works, which then means that I didn't get too confused about what wires go here. I got it connected right, and once the car's running, then we'll be able to confirm whether the cruise control functions or not. These are our machines from Brake Whip. We have a tester, and then of course we have the crimper, and we have a variety of fittings here that we get to choose from. You know, this is something that we do regularly. So basically we just wring out a string of brake line hose that is DOT approved as well, and we make it the correct length that we need. So there is another thing that you have to keep in mind when getting a master cylinder, and remember we decided to get this one new, is it's not going to come with a fluid reservoir. I think I do have a used one laying around here. The reservoir is remote and it hangs up right here. But before I even put that on, I'm gonna concentrate on getting that clutch line right there on that master. There's our clutch line. So I have the clutch line ran across the back of the intake manifold, and then across the front of the engine, and then right here to our brand new slave cylinder. The clutch is bled very fast with that. So really all I have left to do now is put the radiator back in and the fans, put some coolant in it. I still have to put oil in the transmission. Then we're ready to start. So getting the radiator on, you're gonna notice that the transmission cooler hoses are still on there, and you're like, what do I do? It's pretty simple. Just take them off, right? There's a 10 millimeter there and here, and they just come off, and that's it, done. Now there probably could be some transmission fluid in there, so you may want to tip this radiator upside down and drain that out. If it radiator's in, we have coolant in. Something I do with every engine replacement, I think, is something that a lot of people do, and if you don't know, that maybe you should. We don't know how long the engine's been sitting, especially if it's a JDM motor. It could have been sitting for months, maybe even years. Oil is going to drain all the way down to the bottom of the oil pan. This particular one, we had to pull the oil pan off to replace the oil pump. Everything in there is really dry. So what we're going to do is, before we let the engine actually turn over, I'm going to keep the ECU unplugged to keep from the injectors firing, and it will keep the spark plugs from igniting also, so we don't foul those out. And we're just going to turn the key and let the engine rev until the oil pump light goes off. Alright, we're going to start it now. Oh, that's nice. Look at that, no error codes either. Let's make sure it's out of gear. Ooh, that feels nice. Let's see if it goes into gear. Oh, it's going into gear with the foot. Oh, that means the clutch bled like it needed to. That's what's up. But man, that sounds good. Not bad, no check lights yet. I think I'll let it get it to temperature and see if the fans kick on, and then we'll get some oil in the trans. When putting oil in the transmission, you'll want the car level. Me personally, I like to fill from the top, and I'll make this contraption here using the funnel, and I think that's like a 5/8 heater hose down to like a 3/8, which then goes to the breather right there. And you'll recognize that because it sits right there on top, and there is a cap right here that sits over the top of that. Once it starts pouring out, that pretty much means that it's full. Conversion from auto center console to manual is pretty easy. Right here there's this rubber lip. Pull that off, flip it upside down, and our boot here, there's an up and a down, and the provisions for it to mount are already there. So they're just going to be the simple black interior screws. Obviously they're missing, so you'll need to locate these, or off of your donor car, make sure to grab that hardware. We have the interior all put back together, looking like a stock car. So one of my most favorite things to do after a swap is to detail it. Hush started out of my one-car garage, cars lined up and down the road. My neighbors weren't too happy with me, but I also had friends that helped me out. And one of our favorite things to say was, I can't wait to wash this, because that meant the car was done. The bay did clean up quite a bit from what it was. Yep, look at that. So I always like doing this, man, because when the customers see it, they're like, dang, dude, it's like a new motor. The swap is finally complete. I'm very happy with it. We drove it around. We might as well just do a drive with you guys now, and I want to say thank you for watching the video. If you like our series, we have other videos of how-tos. More importantly is the how-to yard. So make sure to check out our website at hushperformance.com. Make sure to check out our sister channel at VTech Academy. And like always, happy tuning.